All right, let's begin. Final part of my assignment was the mirror because it didn't make it into my final scene. I ended up making a separate demo for it. In last week, you told me that the directional light wasn't clearly reflected, so I changed it up slightly so that to make it a bit more clear. Excuse me. So here we have the darker side of the cube on the right. If we look in the reflection, the reflected right side is now the left side, so it's the darkest. The left side's darker in the reflected world. The right side in the reflected world is brighter than the left. So again, left is brighter than right from the reflection. I ended up moving the spotlight to be on the wall so you can see it getting reflected a bit better. And also if we look over here, we can see the outline of the spotlight, of the point light, excuse me, the outline of the point light on the cube. If we look over here, it's the same thing but in reverse. And the spotlight's panning around. The other thing I did was I changed it so the floor reflects light as well to kind of highlight the fact that it's being reflected off of the mirror, the spotlight. So it makes the wall a bit more clear. So to do this, we had to create some extra states. So we had to create an extra stencil for a depth test that doesn't write to the depth buffer. This is so that we know what objects need to be reflected at any given point. So that way it doesn't render the entire scene. Well, it doesn't show the entire scene at all times. It only shows the part that is encapsulated by the mirror. And after that we have the stencil test for the actual windowing of the screen. So this will create the actual mirror itself. And because we had our don't write stencil, we have to make a normal depth test because we're going to be swapping between the two. And other than that, we have two different rasterizers now because when we mirror things, the triangles will be inverted, so everything in the mirror world will be inside out. So we just have to make an extra state so that we can change the winding. So that way, instead of being inside out, when we change the rasterizer to change the winding, we can make them right side in. That is a tongue twister. And lastly, we have to create a blend state for our mirror. We want it to be tinted a color and also not opaque so that we can actually see through the mirror. So this will just make it so that the mirror is not a opaque color. And blend again the different blend states. We have one transparent and no right. Okay, so onto the actual task itself. We have our reflection matrix, which we'll be using to send everything to the mirror world, as well as all of our default objects above. Down here we have our directional lights and our point lights. So directional lights, I changed it up a bit to make it more clear. You can see it reflected better now. Point lights, for this shader color, we have 2 point lights and 2 spotlights, but I'll get to the spotlights later. So our point lights, we have them reflecting back and forth. So our 0 is our normal point light, and the 1 is the point light in the reflective world. So we multiply it by the reflection matrix. And then I set the position to make it into a better spot to see the spotlight. So to start off, we render everything that is in front of the mirror. This is because when we go to do our depth test, we want to make sure that it can see every object in front of the mirror. Because if we don't render an object in front of the mirror before our test, it will fail and it won't get reflected properly. The other part is we want to make sure that only things in front of the mirror are rendered at this state. Because if we render things behind the mirror, say the wall the mirror is on, then that will show up during our future depth test, which will make it so that the wall will get reflected, and because the wall is going to be in front of everything, we won't actually see anything inside our mirror. So it's important to render everything except for whatever is behind the wall here. And then after that, this is where we set up the different blend state to prevent writing to the render target so that we can try and capture the mirror itself, like capture the area the mirror is in, so that instead of showing everything on the other side, it will only show what we can see. So this is where we render that. And once we do that, we will go back to the normal blend state. Afterwards, we change to our mirror rendering for rasterizer, where we will change the winding because it is time to draw the reflected variance. So once we do that, we take everything that we want to be reflected and multiply it by the reflection matrix. The only extra step is with the spotlight. We have to change the direction by the reflection matrix too, but because it is a vector, we want to zero out the direction, or zero out the W, excuse me. And with our engine, every time we do a function or operation, it will set the W to 1 for vectors. So this just asserts that we want it to be 0. After that, we stop using the special stencil and return to normal winding. And we move on to the transparency. This will make it so our mirror is tinted and also will be transparent so we can actually see everything behind the mirror. And once we're done with that, we render the thing that is behind the mirror, which in this case is the wall. And that is it.